So the first movie I saw this year was Hidden Figures, and it's really good. The second movie I saw this year was Underworld Blood Wars, which is an early contender for worst movie of the year. So in Underworld Blood War, the war between the vampires and the Lycans is about to come to a head because the new leader of the Lycans, who looks an awful lot like Gene Simmons, is about to wage war against the final stronghold of the vampires. And vampire Kate Beckinsale is being hunted both by the vampires and by the Lycans because they want to track down her daughter, whose blood they think will make them more powerful. And an ambitious vampire that looks and acts like slutty Ava Green is trying to team up with a guy that looks like CGI Tarkin to try and trick Kate Beckinsale to come back and train the vampires to stop the Lycans. All the while, good-looking and good-hearted David is trying to learn his true identity to try and unite the vampires to end the war. All the while, everybody wants someone's blood. Everyone wants to use someone's blood. Gains knowledge through licking blood. Is aroused by drinking blood. And several other plot lines about good guys wanting to drink blood to gain knowledge about themselves and end the war, and bad guys who want to drink someone's blood in order to gain power. That's the movie. Seriously, there's no other way to put this. This movie is a dreadful mess with only a couple redeeming qualities. So let's talk about the good. First, Kate Beckinsale and Theo James are attractive. So that's good. Second, once it gets going, it goes from action sequence to action sequence pretty quickly. Third, it's only 91 minutes long, so yeah. And finally, the third act of the movie does veer heavily into so bad it's good. Like, if you go see this movie with 5 of your rowdiest friends that watched way too much Mystery Science Theater 3000 back in the 90s, you'll have a good time, at least during the third act. Though you might get kicked out of the theater. Yeah, that's it for the good. Let's talk about the bad. So starting with the superficial, the CGI looks really cheap. Now, all of these movies have had moderate budgets, but I just rewatched the first one, and the visuals in this new one are not better than they were in the first one, which had a much lower budget, and it was made 13 years ago, and there's been a lot of CGI improvements since then, so there's no excuse for the way this looks. Speaking of the look, it feels like it was just shot on a handful of sets in one green screen. There's no scope and size to any of it. It feels like very contained to limited spaces while they're trying to do these big epic action sequences where there's a war between the Lycans and the vampires, but feels small. But more importantly, the action in this action movie, it's terrible. It's that stuff where there's 4 cuts where every punch, it's that cut-fu, shaky cam stuff that everybody hates except apparently movie directors these days. And while the movie has tons of action between vampires and Lycans, it's not vampires fighting werewolves, it's people with machine guns and droves of faceless bodies just shooting at each other, mowing each other down, so you don't see what's going on, so it's not good. It in no way lives up to the potential of a war between Lycans and vampires because it's just people with machine gun who happen to be vampires and Lycans. But that's just the shallow stuff. More importantly is that the story is entirely unfocused and none of the characters have clear motives and objectives. See, in good storytelling, we have to know and care enough about who the characters are and who they're becoming so that when the conflict and obstacles come in their way, we feel the victory as they become who they're meant to become, or when they fail to become that person, when they fail to live up to their potential, when they lose what they've always been aiming for, when they gain it, you feel that victory. None of that is present in this movie. The villains, likewise, don't have clear motives other than, I'm evil and I want power, and therefore you don't care about what they're doing. Most of the henchmen villains have no faces. They're just nameless bodies that are mowed down by machine guns or just killed in a big, gigantic battle, so you don't care about any of it. You don't feel the victories. You don't feel the loss, any of it in the story. With such an unfocused story, we don't know who they are, what they want, where they're going, what they're trying to do, so when they have a victory, it's meaningless. It's just a new thing that happened in a story of meaningless things that just kind of keep happening, and we see what's next, and none of it stirs an emotion in us. I mean, none of the characters here are likable or charismatic or anything beyond the stereotype that is their character. The badass female, the badass guy, the conniving woman, the guy that just wants power. It's all that superficial with all of the characters, and they don't have layers or depth to them. I mean, I guess Kate Beckinsale's the protagonist in the story, but she disappears for big chunks of the movie. She's not the character in the story that has the biggest character arc in development. That's someone else entirely. And she doesn't really drive the plot forward. She's involved in the plot being driven forward, but it's other characters' actions and choices that actually move and progress the story, and other people are the ones that have big victories and losses in the finale. She's just kind of there along for the ride because, you know, she was in the other movies. Well, other than the third one. I'm not a particular fan of any of the movies in the series, but like the first one, at least had interesting characters and you could understand where they were coming from, and they were torn with different motivations and values that took them in strange directions, and you could see them change in their thinking and their worldview shift as new information comes along. None of that is present here. And the first one was kind of clever in that at first you thought you were on Team Vampire, and by the end of it you're a little bit more on Team Lycan, but really you're this third option of people that are trying to think clearly and not just think in terms of just teams. And likewise, in that film, Lucius was a very interesting villain because he wasn't really a villain at all. You understood where he was coming from and why he was justified in his villainous actions. That's good storytelling. That's a good villain. None of that is here. The bad guys are just bad guys. Like the main bad guy just wants power for the sake of power. He wants to kill the vampires and gain power. Like you don't know anything or the names of any of the other Lycans. It's just the one main bad guy. All of the rest are just cannon fodder. And lastly, the movie has a bunch of these reveal moments where it answers a question that you're not asking, that the movie has not been exploring. And then the whole movie has certain areas where they're asking questions and kind of developing some mystery surrounding some stuff and people's locations, and those are never answered. So it answers the questions you're not asking and never answers the ones you are asking. All right, that's enough about this movie. I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 10. That means for me it teeters between so bad it's boring and so bad it's good. The third act definitely veers into the so bad it's good. If you go to this movie with your obnoxious buddies, that last third will be a good bit of fun. The rest of the movie is just tedious to get through. The action is not shot well. It's not fun or funny at all. It's dead serious with a dumb plot that's not conceived very well, with characters you don't want to go on this journey with, and a villain you don't care about at all, other than the fact that he looks like Gene Simmons. If I'm being honest, I don't think I'm going to watch this movie ever again. If I want to watch some Underworld, I'm going to pop in one of the first three. Definitely not this one. But that's just one man's opinion. How about you? Have you seen it? Is there anything redeeming in this movie that I missed? Tell me in the comment section. I'd love to talk about it. If you haven't watched it yet, tell me your favorite of the Underworld movies. I'd love to talk to you about that because I don't want to just talk about Underworld. I want to talk about how bad this movie is with you in the comment section. If you've never clicked that subscribe button, please consider clicking that subscribe button so that my videos will show up in your feed. I would love to chat with you in the comment section. As always, thank you for watching.